It's been in the family for a number of years. It was one of those things where all of a sudden no one wanted it anymore. People aren't really into snake motifs so much, and it had to fit into the right place. So decided it would be nice to have.
It is very clearly signed on the base Edgar Brandt, and that immediately tells us a great deal. Edgar Brandt was one of the most celebrated metal artists in France during the 1920s through the 1940s, widely regarded as a master of wrought iron. Working primarily in Paris and at times in New York, he designed architectural ironwork such as gates, balconies, radiator grills, and decorative panels that define the elegance of the Art Deco period. This lamp is one of his most recognizable sculptural designs, often known as La Tentation, depicting a dramatic serpent rising from a basket. The snake motif reflects the fascination with Egyptian imagery that swept the world after Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. That wave of interest, sometimes called Egyptomania, strongly influenced decorative arts of the era. The base of the lamp is cast bronze, a material rich in copper that can develop a green surface patina over time, much like the famous color seen on the Statue of Liberty. The glass shade was likely produced by the renowned French glassworks Dame Nancy. Together, the sculptural bronze and artistic glass form a striking example of high Art Deco design from the 1920s. I assume the condition was better. It also had a very strong provenance, which can be important. But I think 35,000 or 45,000
That's incredible.
is pretty good.
That's pretty good for a snake lamp.
Well, my mother was a closet collector and in New York City, and she came home one day and this was there. And I asked, "What's the story on this?" And she said, "Well, it's just a little something I got." And that's what I know. I mean, it just appeared in our apartment.
And do you know where she got it?
Yeah, she got it from a dealer in New York.
Well, on the underside of the lamp, there is a small diamond-shaped signature with a P in the center, a discrete mark used by the Pearpoint Company. Pearpoint was based in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and originally produced silver-plated metalware. In 1894, the company joined with Mount Washington Glass Works, and by the early 20th century, they began producing art glass lamps like this one. Around 1907, they applied for a patent for the technique used to create shades like this. The shade is what collectors call a blown-out shade. The glass was first blown into a mold, then the exterior surface was acid-treated to create a soft matte finish, while the decoration was painted on the inside and fired in a kiln so the colors would permanently fuse with the glass. Today, many people refer to these as Pearpoint puffy lamp. What makes this lamp especially unusual is the decoration. Most examples feature floral designs, but this one shows a dramatic owl perched on a branch as if ready to strike its prey. Figural scenes like this are far rarer than the typical floral patterns collectors usually encounter. The base here is the simpler version that was offered with this shade, though there was also a more elaborate sculptural owl base. All right, so on this particular base, a good retail value would be $25,000 to $30,000.
Wow.
Now, if you had the owl base,
Yeah.
it would be more in the range of $60,000 to $70,000.
Wow.
Well, this is a Pearpoint lamp that was brought into my family a long time ago. There are a couple of different stories as to how this lamp got into our family. I'm not really sure which one is true, but the first story is that it was brought by my great-grandparents who settled in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And my grandparents, who took over their house, didn't really care for the lamp, and it was in their attic for decades until my mother found it, at which point my grandmother said, "If you like it, you can have it," and then it eventually worked its way to me.
Well, this is a Pearpoint lamp, and the small mark on the shade reading Pearpoint Corporation with the date 1907 tells us exactly when it was made. Pearpoint began in New Bedford, Massachusetts in the 1880s, a city famous for its whaling industry and once visited by Herman Melville. In the early 1890s, the firm merged with the Mount Washington Glass Company, forming a partnership that produced some of the most distinctive American art glass lamps of the early 20th century. This particular example is known as a Pearpoint puffy lamp. The term refers to the slightly inflated glass panels that form the shade. The glass was blown into a mold, the exterior treated to create a soft surface, and the decoration was painted on the inside before being fired, so the colors permanently fused with the glass. What makes this shade especially striking is its elaborate decoration. One panel shows a charming garden scene with steps and classical urns, while another features an elegant 18th century courting couple dancing together. Around the sides and top are richly gilded floral and striated patterns that shimmer when illuminated. This shape, often referred to as the Roma form, is considerably rarer than the more common floral puffies. Although the market for ordinary examples has softened somewhat, a high-quality shade like this, with such detailed interior painting and gilding, remains very desirable. Because the value of these lamps lies primarily in the shade condition is critical. This one now is, again, is sort of more toward the top of the line puppies. I would say is basically at full retail for insurance, you could say $15,000.
Wow.
And that even might be a little low. You could, I mean, you could really stretch it if you wanted to 20,000. The money is in the shade. So if you have a crack or a big damage in the shade, it's really the value goes just plummets.
Well, this lamp has been in my husband's family, and it belonged to his grandparents. In this photo, you can see the lamp in the background. That was his grandparents' house in Erie, Pennsylvania.
And when do you think the date of that photo was?
It'd have to be early 1900s, I guess.
When I first removed the shade and examined the mark, it became clear that the lamp was made by Duffner and Kimberly of New York. The firm was established in 1905 by Frank Duffner and Oliver S. Kimberly, who had previously worked with Tiffany Studios, Duffner himself had earlier been associated with Bradley and Hubbard Manufacturing Company, so the partnership brought together experienced designers from some of the most influential decorative arts workshops of the period. The lamp features a beautifully made leaded glass shade in the style often associated with Tiffany lamps, composed using the copper foil technique and a rich palette of colored glass. The base is cast in gilt bronze and displays a striking openwork design that many collectors describe as a spider web pattern, giving the piece a refined neoclassical style appearance. During the early 20th century, Duffner and Kimberly lamps were considered serious competitors to Tiffany lamps, as the company produced glass and metalwork of comparable craftsmanship and artistic quality. Because the firm operated for only a relatively short period, going bankrupt around 1911, their lamps can often be dated quite precisely to the early 1900s. When illuminated, the shade reveals a vivid and harmonious color palette that highlights the quality of the glass. The market for Duffner and Kimberly lamps in the last couple of years has kind of risen. I would put an auction estimate on this of $15,000 to $20,000.
Wow.
So it's a very pretty lamp, and it could actually benefit from a little cleaning, and that would brighten up the look quite a bit.
My goodness, I'm stunned.
Yeah.
And I brought it here in a shopping cart.
In a shopping cart, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I ought to reconsider how I'm taking it home.
Maybe a little extra padding.
That's right.
Okay.
Used to hang in my parents' home in Milwaukee on the east side. When my parents bought the house in 1965, it was there at the time. It hung in the house for the 40 years that my parents lived in it.
When was it taken down?
It was taken down probably 15 to 18 years ago because some of the links gave way.
This is a very early lighting fixture associated with the work of Louis Comfort Tiffany. dating to around 1892, when his firm was still known as the Tiffany Glass and Decorating Company, before it later became Tiffany Studios. During the 1880s and early 1890s, Tiffany leased the facilities of the Height Glass Company in Brooklyn, where many of his early opalescent glass elements were produced. This hanging fixture reflects the experimental decorative style of that period. The metalwork features exotically twisted forms designed to resemble rope, finished with a silvered surface surrounding panels of luminous opalescent glass. Small, protruding opalescent glass tiles appear throughout the design, a decorative device Tiffany often used in his early mosaics, windows, and lighting pieces. The overall aesthetic reveals a strong Moorish influence, reflecting Tiffany fascination with Orientalism and Middle Eastern design motifs that frequently appeared in his interior decoration projects of the late 19th century. What makes this example particularly exciting is that nearly all of its original components survive, including the canopy, hanging elements, and the central socket assembly, which is rarely found intact on fixtures of this age. Lighting technology at the time was still transitioning, and many fixtures were designed for gas, electricity, or both simultaneously. Because this piece retains its structure and early design characteristics, it represents a rare surviving example from a relatively obscure early phase of Tiffany lighting production. There were two pieces that came apart. Even with that, with something that could be easily fixed, and this could be wired, again, for electricity, this would sell in a retail shop for between $15,000 and $20,000.
Wow. 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 I am so amazed.
The only thing we know is that it hung in my parents' family room over the table for like 35 years. And my mother passed away, and then eventually my father. So then it became mine. It's a Handel signed lamp, and my father counted all the pieces. There's 877 pieces.
Well, you're right about it being a handle lamp, but believe it or not, there are actually about 1,100 pieces of glass in this shade. We know that because an article written in July of 1907 described this exact design and specifically mentioned that the lamp contained 1,100 pieces of leaded glass. It was produced by the Handel Company, a firm based in Meriden, Connecticut, founded by Philip Julius Handel. During the early 20th century, they became one of the important American makers of decorative lighting and were often seen as competitors to Tiffany Studios. This lamp was likely made around 1906 or 1907 at a time when Handel had opened a factory in New York specifically to produce lamps with opalescent leaded glass. If you look closely at the shade, the upper portion suggests dense foliage that flows downward into what we call the apron of the lamp. In that lower area, the glass develops into flowers and fruit forms, each carefully colored to imitate natural plants. The craftsmanship is quite impressive, especially considering the sheer number of glass pieces involved. Although it is currently mounted as a hanging lamp, there is evidence inside the shade that it may also have been designed to fit onto a floor base. The cap and the chain appear to be later replacements, but the shade itself remains a very fine and large example of Handel's leaded glass work.
Yes.
It would retail at least for between $12,000 and $17,000.
Oh my.
And since this has always been in your family as a hanging shade,
Yep.
it should stay like that.
That's what we'll keep it as.
It's
Thank
very
you.
beautiful.
Thank you. We love it.
I got it from my father's estate.
Okay.
And my father had inherited it from his father. And the family story is that this was purchased by my grandfather in about 1930 from the antiques department at Marshall Fields in Chicago. My grandmother was born and raised in Prince Edward Island.
Ah.
And she and my father would go and have summers back there. And my grandfather, being the good husband that he was,
It's a very attractive lamp, and it was made by Duffner and Kimberly, a New York company active in the early years of the 20th century and considered a competitor to Tiffany Studios, founded by Louis Comfort Tiffany. The firm was established in 1905 by Frank Duffner and Oliver S.A. Kimberly, who had previously worked in the glass department at Tiffany. Although the partnership lasted only a few years because of financial difficulties, they produced lamps of remarkably high quality. This example was most likely made around 1905 or 1906 and is especially interesting because it is a floor lamp, a form that is less commonly encountered from this maker. The lamp features a telescoping bronze standard, allowing the height to be adjusted, supporting a large leaded glass shade. The shade displays a striking scalloped or fish scale pattern with forms that resemble stylized bellflowers. The base is finished in patinated bronze, giving the lamp a rich and elegant appearance. There are a few condition issues, including some cracked panels and a couple of small pieces of missing glass. Even so, the design remains visually impressive. Lamps by Duffner and Kimberly are known for their refined craftsmanship and balanced decoration, and this is a beautiful example. And it would be a better lamp in the future.
okay,
I think even now, in its sort of somewhat compromised position with a couple of pieces of glass missing, you're looking at $15,000.
huh?
$15,000 for a
Oh,
retail.
very good.
And if it were conserved and made whole again,
Yes.
you'd be up from there.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very
Oh,
much. I
thanks for
really
coming in.
appreciate it.
It was given to my mother. The lady that gave it took a picture and told her that she thought it was a Fulper lamp. And she said that she thought it had some value and she loved my mom. And so my mom kept it for, years, and it's been in her living room on a table. And she has since passed. And it's been at my house ever since. I don't know. I'm quite anxious to find out if it really is a Fulper lamp.
It is indeed a Fulper lamp, produced by the Fulper Pottery Company in Flemington, New Jersey, one of the notable American art pottery firms of the early 20th century. Founded in the 19th century, the company originally manufactured utilitarian stoneware, such as crocks and storage vessels, before transitioning around the early 1900s into the production of decorative art pottery. During this period, Fulper became well known for its innovative glazes, including rich flambe and crystalline finishes, which gave their ceramic pieces a distinctive and highly collectible appearance. The lamp you brought in likely dates from around 1910 to 1915, a time when Fulper experimented with combining pottery forms with lighting design. The body of the lamp is made of glazed ceramic in the same tradition as their art pottery vessels, but what truly distinguishes this example is the shade with its inset panels of leaded slag glass. Lamps of this type are quite rare, and while bases are occasionally encountered, the original shades are far less common and often damaged or missing. In this case, the base and shade remain together, and the harmony of the glaze tones between the two is remarkably strong. The condition overall is excellent, with no significant issues visible. I'm not finding anything wrong with this. At auction, easily $10,000 to $15,000.
Oh, you've got to be kidding. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's more than I could have ever thought of. Well, that's wonderful to know, and gee, I wish my mom would have been here so she could have known more about it.
I brought a lamp that was left to me by my mother. It's a Handel lamp. I believe it's reverse painted with a chipped ice glass shade. That's pretty much all I know about it.
When you mentioned that you had always wondered why the shade carried no visible signature, I reassured you that there was really no cause for concern. From the construction and decoration alone, it was clear to me that the lamp was indeed made by the Handel Lamp Company. While examining the piece, I recalled an original drawing reproduced from the company's 1924 sales catalog, which illustrated this very model, numbered 7126, described as an 18-inch decorated Taroma glass shade. The catalog notes an iridescent gold etched ground with a peacock decoration in blues, yellows, greens, and browns, set on a gold and black onyx effect base. When we lifted the shade, the mark handle lamp appeared on the underside, confirming the attribution. Interestingly, these shades are known to appear both signed and unsigned on the market, so yours being unsigned is not unusual. The design itself was created by the artist Henry Bettigy, though the actual painting would have been carried out by skilled workshop decorators using stencil technique. The reverse painted glass, combined with the distinctive chipped ice texture and gilded accents, represents everything collectors admire about handle lamps. In fact, in probably 2004, a lamp like this had sold for as much as $32,500 at auction.
Wow.
And now they've been going down in value. I would put an insurance or a replacement value of $10,000 to $15,000 on the lamp.
Oh, my goodness.
And I kind of think that when you had it appraised a few years ago, it was actually worth more in the neighborhood of about $15,000 to $18,000.
Oh, my goodness. I know my mom probably watches Antique Roadshow up in heaven. And, hey, Mom, you did good.
I bought it in the late 60s in Los Angeles from an antique dealer. In fact, I still have the receipt.
Really? Now, do you remember what year?
I believe it was 1967.
At the time you purchased it in 1967 for $130, that was actually a very fair price for this type of lamp. What you have here is a lamp produced by the Handle Lamp Company dating to around 1915. During the early 20th century, lamps with decorative shades were often compared with those made by Tiffany Studios, and many collectors assumed that any lamp with a complex glass design must be a Tiffany piece. This example does resemble a traditional Tiffany leaded glass lamp at first glance, but in reality, it represents a different technique that Handle became well known for. Rather than being a true leaded glass construction, this lamp features what is called an overlay shade, commonly known among collectors as a cattail pattern. From the exterior, it appears as though many small pieces of colored glass have been joined together with lead, yet when the shade is removed, the structure reveals something quite different. Instead of dozens of individual glass segments, there are large glass panels held in place by a metal overlay framework that is folded over the edges to secure the glass. The color that gives the design its rich appearance was not created by separate pieces of colored glass, but by a colored finish applied beneath the metal overlay. This clever technique allowed Handle artisans to imitate the visual complexity of leaded glass while using a different and more economical method of production. This was a colored finish that was put on underneath the metal overlay. I talked to my colleagues at the glass table, and we feel that if this were to sell in a gallery, it would sell between $10,000 and $12,000.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
You held on to it,
Oh,
and you've got a real gem.
I am just shocked.
I have this light that I purchased from a friend of a friend. She just happened to have some items that she wanted to sell and was very pretty and very unique, and for the right price, I bought it.
You remember what you paid for it?
$175.
And how long ago did you buy it?
I'm gonna estimate maybe 4 years ago.
Even though this piece is not marked, the construction and design make it clear to me that it was produced by Duffner and Kimberly, a New York firm founded in 1905 by Frank Duffner and Oliver S. Kimberly. The company emerged during the same period as Tiffany Studios, led by Louis Comfort Tiffany, and the two firms were often seen as competitors in the production of high-quality art glass lighting. Although Duffner and Kimberly operated only until about 1911 due to financial difficulties, their lamps and lighting fixtures are now recognized for their excellent craftsmanship and elegant design. This example appears to be a wall sconce rather than a ceiling lamp. At some point, someone added hardware so it could be suspended from the ceiling, but originally it would have been mounted on a wall. The shade is particularly striking, displaying a delicate wisteria pattern composed of numerous pieces of leaded glass that cascade downward like blossoms. The metalwork supporting the shade is finely crafted and reflects the high standards that Duffner and Kimberly maintained in both glass and bronze components. The wisteria motif was one of the most desirable decorative themes among early 20th century lamp makers, and many leading studios produced variations of it. In my view, this is an exceptionally beautiful sconce.
I really don't. I said if it's worth $1,000, I'll be excited.
Okay. I would think that a fair retail price on this would be between $8,000 and $12,000.
Holy
And
heck.
and I would have it reworked so it goes back to a sconce. You could certainly hang it and enjoy it in your home.
That is awesome news.
Yeah.
It was part of my father-in-law's house that he purchased in 1930. The house was built in 1905, and this supposedly was part of the original furnishings of that house when it was built in 1905.
What I can tell you right away is that this is definitely not an Italian piece, but rather a very fine example of New England arts and crafts lighting, most likely dating from around 1905 to 1910, which corresponds closely to the period when the house itself was built. The shade immediately caught my attention because of its distinctive border motif. Many people see the design as rabbit and toadstool, but to my eye it reads more like rabbits set among stylized winter trees. A decorative theme that appeared on certain ceramics produced in the Massachusetts region during the early 20th century. The lamp is constructed with leaded stained glass panels, and the craftsmanship is quite impressive. One particularly interesting feature is the use of plating on the rabbits' bodies, meaning an additional layer of glass is applied over the base layer. This technique creates depth and subtle shadowing, giving the rabbits a three-dimensional quality when light passes through the shade. It is a method occasionally seen in high-quality studio glass, and while often associated with works by Tiffany Studios, it appears here in a rarer context. Because of the motif and construction, some specialists have speculated that it could be connected to Bigelow and Kennard, a Boston company known for producing leaded glass shades during the arts and crafts period. While the exact maker still requires further research, the quality of the glass, the layered plating technique, and the distinctive design firmly place it within the American arts and crafts tradition. So I think that in a retail venue in a very good shop that may sell arts and crafts lighting, this could sell for $10,000. If we could do more research and actually pinpoint who made it, it could be a lot more. But what I can assure you is that regardless of who made it, it is a great example of American arts and crafts lighting.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My grandfather bought it just for himself. He liked beautiful things, and he bought it at a jewelry store in Columbia, South Carolina in the early 1900s, maybe 1910, sort of.
Well, that's wonderful, right here in the area then.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, what you have is a puffy pear-point lamp, and the puffy you can see by the roses and by the style there, what they mean by puffy.
Right.
And on the shade, it says patent applied for, which is what we want to see.
Okay.
Then we go down to the base, and it's a beautiful, beautiful base with these floral patterns. This is circa 1905, and then they
Okay.
made them for a few years after that. And, you know, the Pearpoint market dumped. It just dumped. However,
However.
a number of years ago, you would have found these in the thousands.
Mm-hmm.
Then they went down. It got so low that maybe they weren't even selling. But guess what you did?
What?
You held on.
I did.
You
yes.
held on for this 8 and 10 years.
Right.
And I see many sales now where the market has come back.
That's wonderful.
And you are now in possibly an $8,000 to $10,000 retail market.
Oh, that's great.
So
That's
I think
excellent.
you did the right thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Dad brought this antique lamp that I think was either like bought in 1908 or 1909.
Okay. And why do you think that?
Well, because my great great grandfather was getting married, and his mother, my great 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 grandmother, bought him this lamp and his bride as a wedding gift.
When I first examined the lamp, it quickly became clear that although it resembles a Tiffany piece, it was actually made by Duffner and Kimberly, a New York firm that produced lamps during the same period as Louis Comfort Tiffany and his company Tiffany Studios. Duffner and Kimberly was founded in 1905 by Frank Duffner and Oliver S. Kimberly, the latter having previously worked in Tiffany Studios' glass department. By 1906, the company had begun producing elaborate leaded glass lamps that competed directly with Tiffany designs. This particular example can be dated very precisely to 1906 because it appears in the original Duffner and Kimberly catalog from that year. The model was known as the Greek lamp, cataloged as model number 505. The name comes from the classical decorative elements incorporated into the bronze base. You can see paw feet at the bottom, palmet ornamentation rising along the stem, and an egg and dart frieze around the base, all motifs derived from ancient Greek architectural decoration. The shade itself is a leaded glass construction made with slag glass, which creates that softly blended coloration with hints of pink and milky white when illuminated. At the very top is a finial that resembles a pineapple but is more accurately a stylized bud. The harmony between the bronze base and the glass shade reflects the refined yet slightly restrained aesthetic typical of Duffner and Kimberly lamps. Do you have any idea of what value it could be?
Maybe around 5,000.
Maybe around 5,000?
Yeah, maybe. That would be pretty high, actually.
You think so? I think that this lamp, if it came to auction in 2014, it would sell somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000.
Oh, that's cool. My grandmother would be really happy.
The base is stamped underneath Pearpoint, I note as I examine the lamp. The beautifully painted glass shade, decorated with a landscape scene and small figures, is also marked by the Pearpoint Company of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Founded in the late 19th century, Pearpoint became well known for its artistic lamps in the early 1900s, combining elegant metal bases with hand-painted glass shades. This example features a strong urn-shaped neoclassical base and a finely painted shade, a style typical of the lamps Pearpoint produced into the 1920s and 1930s. There is a small chip on the edge of the shade, and since most of the value lies in the glass, that affects the price. If it didn't have that chip, a good auction estimate would be $6,000 to $8,000. Wow. But with the chip, I'd say $5,000 to $7,000.
Wow, okay.
I brought a lamp that was my grandparents'. As long as I can remember, it's
been in our family, and then my mother's, or my parents. I didn't know really anything about it other than our family just loved it. And my mom passed away a few years ago, and I was the one of the 11 children that ended up with it, so.
Do you know where your grandparents got it?
I really don't know where they got it.
Well, as you can see on the side panels, the decoration looks very much like a Venetian scene, and that is what immediately caught my attention when I first examined this lamp. What we are looking at here is a Pearpoint Puffy table lamp made by the Pearpoint Manufacturing Company in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Pearpoint produced these lamps roughly from the 1890s into the 1920s, and stylistically, this particular example likely dates from around 1900 to 1910. These lamps were considered luxury goods at the time and were often sold in major department stores to affluent customers. The shade itself is a wonderful example of Pearpoint's famous puffy technique. It was blown into a mold, acid finished on the exterior to give it that soft matte surface, and then reverse painted with enamel on the inside before being fired in a kiln to fuse the decoration permanently. One interesting aspect of Pearpoint lamps is that the shades and bases were typically sold separately, allowing buyers to choose the combination they preferred. In this case, however, the base also appears to be an original Pearpoint base and pairs beautifully with the shade. What really makes this lamp exciting is the Venetian scene, because scenic shades like this are much rarer and highly desirable among collectors.
Okay.
Value today depends really on the shade, and especially with the Venetian scenes, which are so popular. Conservatively, we would estimate this to sell at auction between $5,000 and $7,000.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Not going to sell it at auction, but it's very nice to know that. My mother would have been happy. We tried to come several years ago when Roadshow was in Tulsa so that she could take it. And so I wore her sweater today so that she would be like she was here.
About 4 years ago, I inherited from a gentleman that I truly looked up to and admired the lamp every time I would go to his home. And he passed away, and he made sure that lamp went to me. I think it's beautiful. I love it. I don't know anything about it. I've never had it appraised.
The base of this lamp is signed by Korff, a German artist working in the late 19th and early 20th centuries who specialized in finely cast bronze decorative objects. The piece immediately draws attention with its sculptural base depicting a Native American figure beside a small flickering light meant to evoke a campfire, a theatrical effect that was popular in early 20th century decorative lighting. The bronze casting shows careful modeling and a rich patina, characteristics typical of European art bronzes of the period. When examining the shade, however, we find a different signature, that of the Moe Bridges Company. This firm, active in the early 20th century with connections to cities such as Milwaukee and San Francisco, produced interior painted glass shades, though it is far less widely known than companies like Handel Company. The shade here features a tranquil wooded pond landscape painted on the interior surface of the glass, allowing the illumination to glow softly through the imagery. In my opinion, the lamp base and shade were not originally produced together and were likely combined later, creating what collectors call a married lamp. Fortunately, the imagery of the landscape works aesthetically with the narrative theme of the bronze base, making the pairing visually harmonious. Interestingly, in most antique lamps, the glass shade carries the majority of the value, yet in this example, the opposite is true. The sculptural bronze base by Korff is the more important element. Most of the time when we bring lamps on, the real money is in the glass shade versus the base. Here we have the reverse. The base is worth much more than the shade itself. As a married piece, I would think in a retail setting it would be worth $6,500.
Wow.
I brought a stained glass lamp that my mom bought in the 60s at an antique shop in Minnesota.
Do you know what she paid?
She paid $75.
And what did she think she was buying?
She always hoped it was an unsigned Tiffany, but I had my doubts about that.
When you brought the lamp in, I began looking closely at its construction, and several details immediately made me think it was made by Duffner and Kimberly rather than Tiffany Studios. Oliver S. Kimberly had actually worked for Tiffany Studios in the 1890s before forming a partnership with Frank Duffner in New York in December 1905. By 1906 and 1907, the company was already producing leaded glass lamps in full scale, competing directly with Tiffany in the American art glass market. One of the first things I noticed was the metal cap on top of the shade. Duffner and Kimberly used two characteristic cap designs, and this stamped metal cap with a fleur-de-lis pattern appears on many of their lamps. When I turned the base over, I also saw another typical feature, a flat iron plate secured with a nut that holds a pipe running through the center of the bronze base, a construction method common to their lamps. The shade design is known as an acorn and oak leaf pattern. Around the edge, you can see a decorative border of acorns and oak leaves, and that same motif is echoed in the base, creating a very unified design. The base itself has a statuary bronze finish, another detail consistent with Duffner and Kimberly production. Lamps like this were sometimes illustrated in early lighting trade magazines around 1909, showing how widely the company distributed its designs. The finish is also a Duffner and Kimberly finish. They didn't spend as much money on their finishes the way Tiffany did, and so they're a little more recognizable. This is a real statuary bronze finish. If this were in a retail shop, it would sell for around $6,000.
Okay, great, super.
My grandmother got it from her sister. I believe it was about around 1930. My aunt was moving, and my grandmother had 4 little boys, and she said, "Would you come buy a train set from me?" And when my grandmother went there, I think the lamp also came home with her. So my grandmother had it. She gave it to her only daughter, my aunt, who's now in her early 80s. And when I went to help my aunt move from California, from Los Angeles, to the Pittsburgh area, she said to me, "Is there anything you would like?" So when I went into the bedroom, I saw this lamp. And I said, "I have a blue living room." I said, "That would be very nice." And she said, "It's yours."
Actually, here we have Dom Nancy, which is where the Dom factory was located in Nancy, France. The lamp is a fine example of early 20th century French decorative glass produced by the celebrated House of Dom, founded by Jean Dom in 1,878 inches, the city of Nancy. After the death of Émile Gallet in 1904, Dom rose to become one of the most respected producers of artistic glass in Europe. This lamp reflects the transition from the Art Nouveau tradition into the geometric elegance of the Art Deco period. The shade displays a beautifully modeled palette that blends green into deep blue, creating a soft atmospheric glow when illuminated. The signature, Dom Nancy France, etched directly into the glass, is an authentic mark commonly used by the company. Supporting the shade are hand-wrought metal arms, which further indicate quality craftsmanship typical of Dom's workshop production. While Dom is widely known for its cameo glass lamps, this example represents a later stylistic direction, emphasizing color and form rather than layered carving. Despite a later electrical rewiring, the lamp remains an authentic and attractive piece of French art glass. But this one, it really is a legitimate Dom lamp, very nicely done, very good size, and it's a very attractive lamp. I would say retail, we're talking about $5,000 or $6,000 very easily. You have a nice piece of art glass from the early 20th century, and you have a nice family story as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Very good. It's a
Yes.
pleasure to see it. I'm glad you came in.
All right. Thank you.
I inherited this lamp from my grandfather. He ended up with it in 1930s.
Yeah.
And I got it 2 years ago. All I know is that it's a Bradley Hubbard lamp and that it's got a lot of stuff on it.
Bradley and Hubbard started in 1852 in Meriden, Connecticut. The lamp before us is a fine example of decorative lighting produced by Bradley and Hubbard, a company widely respected for its artistic metalwork and high manufacturing standards in late 19th and early 20th century America. Founded in Meriden, the firm built a reputation for producing elegant lamps, metal fixtures, and decorative household objects until the company was eventually sold in 1940. The lamp bears the firm's well-known triangle and lantern trademark, confirming its origin. Stylistically, it dates to the early 20th century, a period when American decorative lighting was heavily influenced by the success of Louis Comfort Tiffany and his celebrated art glass lamps. While Bradley and Hubbard did not produce lamps identical to Tiffany's work, they were among the finest manufacturers working in the broader Tiffany-inspired aesthetic. The piece features patinated white metal with rich neoclassical ornamentation. The base is decorated with sculptural masks, scrolling foliage, ribbon motifs, and a large classical urn form, all hallmarks of the company's sophisticated casting work. The shade is constructed with curved glass panels rather than flat ones, indicating a higher level of craftsmanship and design quality. Overall, the lamp represents a handsome and substantial example of Bradley and Hubbard production. Do you have any idea what it might be worth now?
I've seen them online for a couple hundred up to a couple of thousand.
I think in good shape, this would have a retail price around $4,000 to $5,000.
Oh, wow.
So you have a very nice example of a Bradley and Hubbard lamp.
Awesome.
Caretaker for an elderly lady, and she had the lamp. When she passed away several years ago, I was always interested in the lamp, and I asked the estate what they were going to do with the lamps, and they offered them to me. So this was my favorite one. I cleaned the lamp for 20 years, and I know every time I cleaned it, I noticed another detail on it, and it just drew my attention every time I saw the lamp.
Oscar Bach was a pretty prominent metalworker. Born in Germany in 1884, he trained in European metalworking traditions before moving to New York City in 1911, where he established a studio with his brother. Bach quickly became known for highly decorative architectural metalwork and lighting fixtures, producing works in bronze, wrought iron, and later stainless steel. His reputation grew through major exhibitions and commissions for prestigious buildings such as the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building, helping secure his place among notable designers of the early 20th century. The lamp presented here reflects the elegance of the Art Deco period of the 1920s to 1930s. Cast in bronze, it features stylized deco figures and ornamental floral motifs that combine sculptural form with decorative lighting. One of the most striking elements is the luminous glass globe. When illuminated, the globe reveals a rich gold iridescence characteristic of glass produced by the Steuben Glass Works. Bach often incorporated Steuben globes into his lamps, integrating their refined art glass with his own elaborate metal designs. This model actually has come up a few times in the last couple of years. An auction value on this would be between $3,000 and $5,000.
Really? Wonderful.
Really great lamp, and
Thank
it's
you.
in really great condition. Don't do anything, a soft rag, and that's really all that has to be done to it.
And that's all it's had for the last 20 years
Right.
of the soft rag. Thank you
That's
so
all.
much.
You're welcome.
My husband's Aunt Genevra and great Uncle Frank were married in 1915. And after they were married, they went shopping in Toledo, Ohio. And my husband's great aunt saw this lamp and she fell in love with it. Her husband told her then maybe they should buy it. And she said, no, it is too expensive. And it cost $32.50 at that time. And so They went back home. Her husband liked to spoil her. So he thought that he'd go back to Toledo and purchase a lamp. You can imagine how excited she was when he came in with a lamp.
Well, I think he sounds like a very good, loving husband, spoiling his wife. So, who do you think made this lamp?
I am not sure. Really, we don't know any more about it than it was purchased in Toledo, Ohio.
And you did show me the invoice, and it didn't list a maker. And one of the reasons it didn't list a maker is probably because it's not signed. However, this is a great arts and crafts lamp, and it was definitely made circa 1915. I conferred with some of my colleagues, and we feel quite certain that this was made by Limbert. The Charles P. Limbert Company was based both in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Holland, Michigan. And most of these weren't signed anyway, so you have to know what you're looking for. This is a particularly nice example because you have all these inset pieces of sunset orange glass, and usually these are replaced over the years. They get damaged, they're replaced. Every single piece of glass in this is original. Has this beautiful metal overlay, all intact, no pieces missing, wonderful hammered copper finish on the base. Fortunately, nobody cleaned it. It also has the original sockets. It has the original pulls. And a lamp like this, in this condition, in today's market, the retail value would be $3,000 to $4,000.
Oh my, I never dreamed that it was worth anything like that.
It was given to my father-in-law by one of his patients, and my father-in-law didn't want it.
Right.
So he gave it to me.
When I first examined the lamp, the construction and overall design immediately suggested the work of Duffner and Kimberly. This New York firm was established in 1905 by Frank Duffner and Oliver S. Kimberly, who had previously worked in the glass department of Tiffany Studios, after leaving Tiffany in the late 19th century, Kimberly helped develop a competing line of high-quality art glass lamps during the early 20th century. This particular example was likely made around 1909 and is somewhat unusual because it is designed as a desk lamp, a form that appears less frequently in the company's production. The lamp displays a distinctly classical aesthetic typical of Duffner and Kimberly designs. The bronze base is beautifully cast and decorated with an elegant shell motif, which is repeated on the reverse side of the base and echoed again in the ribbed pattern of the shade. The company often favored a warm gold tone finish on their bronze bases rather than darker brown patinas, which further supports the attribution. Although many collectors expect a signature, only a small portion of Duffner and Kimberly lamps were actually marked, usually those from their more expensive lines. Structurally, the lamp shows some issues, including cracks in the glass shade and later alterations to the wiring and switching system. The whole thing needs to be reworked. A lamp like this should really be put into original condition if it is possible. This lamp today, in a retail venue, could be sold between $3,000 and $4,000. Now, if this lamp were perfect, it could be worth between $6,000 and $7,000. Okay. I don't have to go to the gym today because lifting this thing up was
very heavy.
My dad bought this lamp when he was like 20 years old, going to college, riding a bicycle, and there was an elderly gentleman that had this lamp in the window. So my dad saw it and he said, "If you ever want to sell that lamp, I'd like to buy it." So the elderly gentleman said it's not for sale. So about 3 months later, the man said, "Would you really like to buy that lamp?" And he said, "Yes, I would." He said, "I'll sell it to you for $25."
Well, I can tell you that it is a Steuben Goldarine glass lamp. Steuben Glassworks was founded in 1903 in Corning, New York, and quickly became one of the most respected producers of art glass in the United States. The company was working during the same period as Tiffany Studios, and both helped define the golden age of American decorative lighting. This particular lamp dates to around 1910 and shows the beautiful iridescent surface known as Aurine glass. The warm golden color shifts in the light, giving the surface a metallic glow that collectors immediately recognize. What makes this example especially appealing is that both the shade and the base are made of glass. Many lamps from the period combine a glass shade with a metal base, but this glass-on-glass construction is less common and gives the piece a very luminous quality. It is not unusual that the lamp is unsigned. With Steuben, specialists often rely on the color, the shape, and the distinctive iridescent finish to identify the maker. The proportions, the tone of the gold Aurine surface, and the elegant design all point clearly to Steuben production. I recognize the glass, and I recognize the color, and I recognize the shape, and that's what tells me that it's Steuben.
Oh, okay.
Okay. At auction, it would most likely sell for $2,500 to $3,500.
Okay. Very nice.
Not bad on a
No.
$25 investment.
I should say so, and it's a beautiful lamp.
Well, this lamp was my grandmother's. When she had passed away, we ended up divvying up articles that she had left behind. My grandmother used to have it on the table in the living room. Whenever she went out, she always turned on the light, and then I could always see it from the driveway. You could just see it shining, and she had a big picture window.
I'm glad you were able to acquire it because it clearly has a lot of sentimental value. Looking at the lamp more closely, I can tell you it was made by the Pearpoint Company of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Pearpoint originally produced metalware, but in 1894, the firm merged with the Mount Washington Glass Company, another well-known glassmaker in the same city. By around 1900, the business became the Pearpoint Corporation and soon began producing decorative lamps, a line that flourished from about 1904 through the 1920s. The shade on your lamp is known as the Berkeley shade. The name refers to its graceful dome shape with a flared rim. Its surface has what collectors call a chipped ice texture, designed to resemble frost on a window pane. The decoration is created using reverse painting, meaning the imagery is painted on the inside of the glass and then fired so the colors bond permanently with the surface. This particular example appears to be the larger version of the model, likely around 16 inches across, rather than the smaller 14-inch type sometimes seen. On the base, there is a diamond-shaped mark with the letter P in the center, identifying Pearpoint as the maker. The shade itself is not signed, which is not unusual for this company. As expected, for a lamp over a century old, there are a few condition issues, including some paint loss underneath the shade, a small chip along the rim, and corrosion on the metal stem of the base. Based on its style and construction, the lamp likely dates to around 1912. Because of the issues with the shade and with the base, in today's market, I probably would value it between $1,000 and $2,000. Okay. If it were in perfect condition, it would probably be more like $2,000 to $3,000. I see. This is a market that's been softened.
I think I'll keep it for a while, though. Every time I look at it, I think of my grandmother.
Well, it's a Tiffany lamp. I inherited it back in 1972, and it's been in a box ever since until this last couple days.
And why do you think it's Tiffany?
It has its name on the shade and on the base.
This lamp at first glance seems to be a Tiffany example, especially because there is a tag on the shade and a stamp on the base that reads Tiffany Studios, New York. However, when I examine the lamp more carefully, I immediately notice that the shade does not sit correctly on the base and the proportions do not quite match. That is usually the first sign that the parts may not belong together. Looking closely at the shade, I can see that it was actually made by the Unique Art Glass and Metal Company, a firm established in 1904 that became well known for producing lamps in the same copper foil glass technique used by Louis Comfort Tiffany. This shade was likely produced around 1910, during the period when the company was actively making Tiffany-style lighting. The base tells a different story. It was manufactured later, around 1920, by the Moe Bridges Company in Milwaukee. Their bases were usually paired with reverse painted glass shades rather than leaded glass, often showing classical imagery such as the ruins of the Parthenon, which explains the Greek-inspired decoration on the metalwork. The Tiffany signature that appears on the lamp is unfortunately not authentic. The irregular lettering and mineral buildup around the tag indicate that it was inserted long after the lamp was made. Even so, the shade itself is an attractive early 20th century art glass example. And together, the lamp represents an interesting combination of genuine period components. You look at the object first, you don't look at the signature. Signature is always the last thing I look at. In a retail store, this would probably sell for $1,000 to $1,500.
I was hoping it was worth a little more than that.